Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to today's Prevention Matters panel session hosted by the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness called How to Stop the Incarceration-to-Homelessness Pipeline for Indigenous Men, the Sagatay program model. My name is Steph Vasco and I'm the Director of Communications at the COH, and I'll be one of your hosts today. For those of you joining for the first time, Prevention Matters is a monthly panel series where we bring together leaders and experts to explore one core idea. How do we sustainably prevent homelessness? The series explores everything from emerging prevention research and best practices to proven program models and the policy and practice conditions needed to scale them in the real world. Backed by strong evidence that prevention must be an integral part of any homelessness strategy and that the current and growing homelessness crisis cannot be solved without it, we created this series to equip service providers, policymakers, governments, funders, and researchers with the knowledge and tools needed to implement and scale prevention across their communities. But to start our panel today, I'd like to first begin with paying respect to the traditional guardians of the land where many of us are calling in from today. So at the COH, we recognize the long-standing and ongoing relationship that Indigenous peoples have with Turtle Island, which includes both ceded and traditional land, and also includes the land known as Canada. Based at York University in Toronto, we acknowledge our presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Toronto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. If you're unfamiliar with the territories, languages, or treaties of the land you're calling in from, we invite you to take a moment to learn more. Lindsay will be sharing the digital native land map tool in the chat, where you can find your location and explore this information in more detail. So before I hand things over to my co-host to introduce the panelists, there are a few housekeeping items I wanted to share. So we will be hosting an audience Q&A at the very end of the discussion, so we encourage you to ask any questions you might have. We also encourage you to engage in the chat and share any reflections or ideas that resonate with you during the panel. And as always, we encourage that you keep the conversation kind. We will be recording today's panel and we'll send everyone here an email with the recording. And with that, I now pass it over to Stephen Gates to get our discussion started.
Thanks, Steph, and thank you everyone who's joining us on the webinar. As you will be aware, like when we talk about the prevention of homelessness, one of the things that we often come around to is that many of our public institutions discharge people into homelessness, even though it's well understood that that's not the best thing to do. So, people get discharged from child protection. People get discharged from inpatient care in hospitals, even though the research shows if you are discharged into homelessness, whatever took you to the hospital is just going to get worse. And then there's finally people being discharged from corrections. And, there's a bi-directional relationship between prison and homelessness, right? So people who are homeless are more likely to wind up in prison. People in prison are more likely to wind up homeless. And the challenge is that we often don't do anything to help people. It's just like, off you go. We'll see you later. Here's a bus ticket. Like literally that level of support. And the research shows if you discharge anyone from prison into homelessness, the chance is that they will reoffend goes through the roof, right? Because people are desperate. And you think from a policy perspective, is that good policy? That's not crime reduction, that's crime production. We're investing in producing the problem we're trying to solve. So the focus of today's discussion, and then we'll get around to introducing our great team of presenters. The focus is going to be looking at how do we interrupt that pattern of discharging people into homelessness, particularly Indigenous people who face additional challenges. And so we're going to work with a case example of Sagatay program model at NamiRes in Toronto. It's a real world intervention, designed to disrupt that flow. It's been around for a while, and so there's a strong sense of how to do that work well. What are the key things? It's a great case study that shows that Indigenous led, and this is important, Indigenous led, culturally grounded, holistic models achieve really good outcomes. Like it works. So once we get over the excitement that it works, we need to start asking ourselves, why isn't this happening in every community? So we're going to be talking about all of this today, and we have a great panel of guests. I'm going to hand it over. I'm going to another Steve T, uh, to introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Jane and Shane.
All right. Hello, everyone. Bonjour, Jashko Jeshiwang Nabe, Manadonane Dis Nakas Wab Shishidodim. Let's give you a greeting in Ojibwe language. My name is Steve Teekins, and I'm from Nipissing First Nation here in Ontario. I'm the executive director of NamiRes Native Men's Residence, and we operate the Sagatay program. And pleasure to see all our online guests here. And I hope you leave the session today with more knowledge on this subject and hopefully become allies in helping to advocate for more Indigenous-led types of services like this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Jane. Oops, you're still muted there. I do that all the time.
All the time. Sorry. Hello, I'm Jane. I am the manager at Sagatay. I have been with NamiRes for about 8 years now, all 8 years managing Sagatay. It's a wonderful program, and I think my purpose here just to make sure that we share that information and people really get an understanding of how well this program works and why it works and why we should be expanding it as much as possible. Thank you.
Great, and thanks. Now, over to you, Shane.
Hi, my name is Shane. I'm a 39-year-old Indigenous offender, still on parole, navigating the system. I'm here to speak on my experiences and hopefully give some insight.
Great. We're really looking forward to hearing from you, Shane. So let's start with, what's the problem here? Why is there this flow from incarceration into homelessness? Why is that a crisis as opposed to a random happening? And how does it disproportionately impact on Indigenous people who wind up involved with the criminal justice system? And so, Jane, can we go to you first to comment on that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that affect this. First of all, there is a stigma stuck that's attached to incarceration. So once you're released, you're not able to find housing, maybe not able to find work and things like that. And then it's a cycle. You come back because you've done something. And then you're reincarcerated. And then there's a lack of release planning. You cannot just release someone into your community with no resources. And they could be as simple as ID. So when you're just releasing someone and say, figure it out, they can't. We have not accounted for the discrimination that comes with incarceration and that status on your files. We've not accounted for the lack of release planning where you have a place to go, you have someone to go to, you have as simple as proper clothing to leave the institution. And also, there's a lack of programs out there that deal with root causes of why Indigenous men are incarcerated and then reincarcerated, and it just becomes a cycle. There's no direct work being done to address the colonial roots, the actual problems. We're just saying, get out there, do it, and that doesn't work. We need to fix the root causes and then kind of hope for the best or do the best. But if there's a lack of programming that is for Indigenous men specifically to deal with their specific traumas. I do want to just point out that 40% of homelessness or homeless men cite incarceration, but then 30% also reoffend, and it just, again, it's a cycle. So there's a lack of planning and a lack of resources that we're providing.
Thank you. That's I like how you spoke of the lack of resources, but also like there's cultural factors and a history that leads Indigenous people to be more likely to be involved in criminal justice. Steve,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about this, the problem we're trying to solve, and how
Yeah.
you came to land on what to do about it?
Okay. Well, I've lived here in Toronto since 1995. I've pretty much worked in with Indigenous homeless people since that time here in Toronto as a frontline worker. I'm the executive director now, and basically, the incarceration to homelessness pipeline. What I've seen is, a lot of Indigenous men are more likely to enter that pipeline than non-Indigenous because they're overrepresented in the justice system.
Yeah.
Currently, in the federal justice system, the stats are around 30 to 33% of the incarcerated population are Indigenous. Meanwhile, we only make 5% of Canada's whole population. So the gap has been widening in the last 5 years. Stats show that Indigenous men are incarcerated 9 to 10 times more than a non-Indigenous men. And that I think some of the systemic barriers are, let's call it's systemic racism. Absolutely it is. And the driving force behind this pipeline is insufficient pre-release planning. I know there's GLADU principles. It's very rare for us in our experience to see Native men getting released with a GLADU report to help with their parole considerations. It's not being applied across the board evenly. And, it's just incredibly frustrating that our Indigenous population is overrepresented within the criminal justice system. It's a huge problem. I don't see it going away. I know we're a very successful program. I'd love to expand or even have others replicate this across Canada because it works. But there seems to be a lack of investment or interest from Corrections Canada to enable this sort of thing to happen. And investment in the status quo is not going to get us any new results. If you invest in the status quo, expect the same type of results.
Exactly. Thank you. I think in these kind of conversations, it's important to talk with people who've lived through these experiences of homelessness and the criminal justice system. So Shane, can you talk about what the barriers and circumstances you faced rebuilding your life once you were released from incarceration?
Well, first and foremost would be just being released after serving a long sentence, just trying to reintegrate into the community in general without having any of those supports is already a navigation nightmare as it is. When you're being put out there and you have all these tasks that you have to complete on their agenda with no support, it becomes a point where it builds up your anxiety and it makes it almost impossible without the proper supports around you to navigate it. And it's almost like they want you to fail. I've experienced this over and over again. I've been in and out of jail for the last 10 years, homelessness, and they put you back onto the street and it's the same cycle. Having the supports is what finally got me to where I'm at now. Having the community, having the healing, being able to take part in my culture.
Right.
So just building those positive supports when you're coming out and trying to make those connections without having the connections or the navigation is where it needs to be. They need to point you in the right direction and have these supports for anybody that wants it.
Right. exactly. It really needs to be driven that way. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So we've talked a bit about the lack of supports. What are there like mainstream programs out there that promise to help with reintegration? And if so, how does that work out? Steve, I'll ask you that one first. What are the kind of supports that are there?
Okay, so we're talking about the status quo here.
The status quo, that's
yeah.
right.
So basically, well, I'd like to argue that, investing in the status quo is a misinvestment.
Uh-huh.
That custody spending for cultural programming is historically prioritized, custody spending over culturally based cultural programming. Correction zone research shows that culturally relevant programs reduce reoffending by 9%. That Section 84 releases reduce returns to custody by 26%, and that cultural engagement is a key success factor and indicator. Not addressing the root causes or healing represents decades of investment in mainstream correctional reintegration approaches that have unsuccessfully addressed the root causes to incarceration and supported long-term healing and community belonging. Underused and inequitable sections 81 and 84. In our experience, there's been bureaucracy, delays, limited capacity to restrict access to Section 81 and 84, and that the gap between their legislative intent and their actual implementation constitutes a policy failure in itself. There was a call to action 37 in the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action that called on the federal government to expand Indigenous specific programming in halfway houses and parole services, including support for rehab and healing. And, I would say that's not even close to being fulfilled. We're hoping that maybe this forum and this research that we've done with COH will help move the mark on that. But,
Right.
that's my short answer for that.
Great. Jane, what would you like to say about that, about the mainstream approaches and how they work?
What we find is it's not working because it's not suitable for everyone. And it's 30% of Indigenous men are homeless within 2 years post-release. In my experience, it's a lot sooner. 2 years is a great number, but in my experience, it is a lot sooner because they don't have the adequate resources to use to be successful. We're setting them up for failure just with the mainstream program. The other thing I will say is 65 to 70% of Indigenous men reoffend within 5 years. So it's closer to 60% reoffend within 5 years. So again, something is not working. What is not working is, one, there's a lack of culturally grounded programming. So again, nothing to attach them to their roots, nothing to go back to. Nothing, there's just no sense of community, of belonging, of living with dignity. There's none of that. Part of this problem is also the self-identification issue that we come across all the time. So when there are programs, even when they are Indigenous based or Indigenous or for Indigenous people, they are open to everyone else. So you can identify as Indigenous and take part in the program, and that will alienate the Indigenous people in that program. So that's an issue. The other thing is with Sagatay, a lot of our guys are considered high risk. 70% of our guys are high risk status, which basically means that is something that will hold them back from getting a job or even being in the mainstream programs because they're considered, whether it's too dangerous or too easy to reoffend. It could be a number of things, but the point is that they are not receiving the services because of that status, that sort of designation of high risk or a dangerous offender. So they're not even receiving the programming that they need. And just in general, we don't have the dollars to continue with everyone. I think we spoke about the fact that Sagatay has 5 beds. So we can help 5 men at a time. And that's our finding. So that it's just not available.
Yeah, there's need. Is there so the mainstream programs that you're speaking about that are designed to assist Indigenous people, are they Indigenous led or they're not, right? So why is that a problem?
So you're seeing us all shake our heads, and they're not. Namiraz believes in Indigenous, for Indigenous, by Indigenous. A lot of mainstream programs are not, so they're being taught by non-Indigenous people, and they may have a lot of knowledge, but the life experience is not there. So that connection is missing. So that's another thing we do that is not available in mainstream programs. So there are other agencies and CRFs who have more Indigenous men in their programs, but because the programs are not Indigenous led or not Indigenous at all, they're not working for Indigenous men.
Right. Okay. Thank you. It's very interesting. So Shane, what was your experience? This is, I'm curious, like from somebody who's actually been through them, what was your experience of these mainstream programs and why weren't they a good fit for you?
I feel like it's more quantity over quality.
Right.
They just pump out the numbers. That's their goal, is to just fill the numbers and not get the quality out of it. As long as they hit their numbers, then it's good on their end. But what they're actually putting out is not quality because nobody's actually getting what they need to heal.
Right.
Like Sagatay only having 5 beds, I mean, it's amazing what they do, but if it could expand, it would help a lot more people. And that's part of the quality. Sagatay is that quality, and the rest of it's the quantity that are just pumping through numbers. I've been through the mainstream, and even in the system inside, the Indigenous programs that they provide in there are not taught by Indigenous people. Yes, they have an elder that comes in and speaks once in a while, or somebody that comes in and smudges or does circle, but it's not enough that they're in the program. It's not being taught by somebody that's Indigenous. And this is the program that CSC is signing off on and saying that I've completed.
Wow. You know what? This is really powerful, and it just screams at policy failure.
It is.
And so I'm assuming that these kind of problems have been going on for a long time. Like, at what point is someone going to do something and invest in things that work?
It's
Mm-hmm.
and I've only seen it from the little bit of the time that I've done. Not to say it's probably been worse prior to that. And they're just trying to cover it up a little bit now and make it look like it's all sunshine and lollipops, but it's not.
Checking off a box, we have this program, but without.
That's the quantity part, right? But at the end of the day, it's not quality. Like
Right.
the way that they run it.
Yeah, thanks. That's it's important to focus on what the problem is, because I'd say a lot of people aren't aware of these things, and so we have to shine the light on them if we're going to try and change things.
It's not that everybody doesn't fit into one box, and that's how they categorize it. Everybody is okay. Well, you're going to follow into this category. Everybody follows into this. I mean, everybody's different, so everybody has a different healing path. So you have to treat everybody accordingly. You can't just put everybody in the same box and expect everybody to heal and get different results.
Yeah.
It's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, that's right. Keep doing the same thing, even though you know it doesn't. Yeah. So, the Sagatay is kind of like in a way, a radical innovation in terms of the mainstream
Yeah.
pieces that have been done.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about how it all works. What is it about the program that, from your perspective, makes it effective? Like in designing the program, what were the things that you were like, we really need to be thinking about this and better make sure we're not doing that? So, Steve, do you want to start off talking?
Right. So Sagatay started in 2009.
Okay.
It started as a way we took a very conscious look at how we deliver our programs and services for the men that we work with who are experiencing homelessness.
Right.
We we redesigned the program. When we renovated our building, we made sure all the rooms where the boys sleep, they all had their own three-piece bathroom. We did that intentionally, not because we wanted to make it like a Club Med sort of thing. We wanted them to get used to living independently, living in a space where they might be accustomed to living if they were living in a bachelor apartment elsewhere. So each room had its own three-piece bathroom, sink, toilet. We had culturally rooted programming for the guys. We had a life skills program called the Pindamoanin. In Ojibwe, that means having confidence in myself. A lot of folks that leave corrections or have experienced homelessness, often they lack confidence in themselves. So through the culture, we rooted a lot of our programs in building up that confidence as well as building up life skills. We have Ojibwe language, as I mentioned. We have a sweat lodge right at the back of our building. We focus on healing. We treat people that come through our doors with kindness, which is something that shouldn't be a novel approach, but I find sometimes working in this field it is. It's a cultural value that many of our First Nations people share, is treating our guests with kindness. We treat them with dignity and respect. We stabilize the guys that come through our doors for housing, and we reconnect them to culture with while strengthening their life skills and transition them into independent living with sustained wellness. We help them adapt to the community here in Toronto and know where to seek help if they need help for different types of services for when they leave. We don't make them dependent on our services that can help them.
Right.
The other thing that works well is our Sagatay program is an abstinence-based approach with a healing first kind of approach, and it's grounded in Indigenous-led governance and cultural authenticity. To back up a little bit, we offer 26 beds in total at Sagatay, 5 to 6 of which are for CSC Indigenous men on Section 84 releases. Our cultural foundation is rooted in access to elders and traditional knowledge keepers and holders. Ceremony is quite regular. Some of our strategic planning is rooted in helping men understand our traditional responsibilities that we have held in the past to our families and community and to our nation. We have other cultural programs like drumming, various cultural teachings. We have a medicine wheel garden for land-based healing where the men learn how to garden and grow things from being plants from a seedling all the way up to nurturing them through that life cycle till it's time to harvest. Then when it's harvest time, we'll bring in people with that traditional plant knowledge to share that with the men and help them understand the medicinal qualities of those plants. We have holistic support. In the spiritual aspect, we have cultural reconnection and identity development. From the mental aspect or quadrant, we have life skills training and education, employment readiness. From the emotional quadrant of the medicine wheel, we have peer support, brotherhood, trauma-aware staff, and family reconnection supports. We have a program called Fatherhood is Sacred. A lot of the men that come to our program are fathers. Maybe some of them weren't around to raise their children. That might be a source of shame or a sore spot for them. So, we encourage them to reconnect in a safe way. Sometimes for some of the men, it might be too late for them to father their children, or at least raise them. So, but they might maybe really good grandparents once they come forward and learn some of these things. From the physical aspect of things, we offer stable housing and healthcare access. Namirez operates a health center called the Doje Minon Nasewanong right across the street from us. It's kind of convenient. We have nutrition type workshops and wellness programming. And, of course, so we do the Western approaches as well. We have case management and weekly check-ins with the guys. The life skills program usually lasts 3 to 6 months, depending on the individual. It's a required program that our residents have to participate in order to be accepted into Sagatay. And afterwards, the boys can expect to be placed in housing. Namirez, we operate some of our own housing that we build ourselves, and we make really nice spaces for the guys. We offer deeply affordable housing. And if we don't have any of our affordable housing stock, we'll help them access other affordable housing within Toronto that will help them to be successful. And anybody that gets housed at Namirez, we assign an aftercare worker, whether it's our housing or private market. And that's just the norm. Everybody gets a follow-up housing worker once they leave Namirez. And some of the guys don't want it, but they know it's there if they decide they might need it. The expectations that the guys can see when they come to Namirez is a abstinence-based atmosphere, that they can expect to participate in our life skills as well as do chores and a healing environment.
That's amazing. There's a couple of things I want to comment on. Like when you started talking about people getting their own room with their 3-piece washroom, and then later spoke of dignity and respect. Like to me, that's what's going on, right? Like rather than, you get a different kind of housing situation, that people have some control. I always think like the ability to close a door and lock it is very powerful. The other thing with the Indigenous cultural focus, for some of the people who come through your program, they may have, through like their family history and trauma, become disengaged from Indigenous culture. Do you find that? And what's the transformation like? That it must be visceral, like you actually see like the change in a person.
Well, when we engage people in our cultural ways of doing things, we wrap the community around them. It seems to happen naturally. I know some of our men, if we, give them teachings about fire keeping, which is one of the men's roles, they participate in ceremony. They're held in high esteem by folks that attend those ceremonies. Often, if we have community members that pass away, our men will be requested to, light a fire and keep that going for 4 days to help those families grieve and help that spirit go off to the spirit world in a good way. And, it's reciprocal. It helps the men doing the fire keeping feel good about the work they're doing. That helps the community see them in a good light. And it helps them embrace more into the culture. The culture, I think, is a protective factor and something that helps Native people to heal, to feel a part of something bigger than themselves and become part of community.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. Jane, what are your thoughts on the key things that are going on here that are really designed to help people?
So part of the Sagatay program, when our men come here, it's 100% programming. So they must. It's mandatory for the first 3 to 6 months. However, that deals with everyday sort of life skills, and then we also offer, in the end of their stay, is 100% of housing stability. So we offer that at the end, and if they take us up on it, great. If they don't, great. Like Steve said. So that in itself is a stabilizing factor. You know that you're coming here to learn a few things, but that you will land on your feet at the end if that is what you want. I'll say, our day parole guys, so Sagatay's day parole guys have a 43.9% completion rate. Now, you can't really compare that to the national rate because I believe the national rate is 87%. But 70% of our guys are considered high risk. So it's not the same population, really. We're looking at a population of guys who other programs and other systems have said no to, or feel that they're not going to be successful. And Sagatay, we just don't feel that way. When you take all the cultural connection, the reduced recidivism, life skills, the confidence building, whether it's working or voluntary, you take all those factors into consideration. Our day parole guys have an overall completion of 69%. And again, these are guys who are considered not able to improve their conditions and not able to improve on their lifestyles, that they are expected to fail. So all those, and I would say expected and sometimes really set up to fail. So, but with all these things that we do, they're able to be successful if they want it. And we always say that if you want it, we're here.
Wow. So the program's producing some really amazing results, right? Anything more you want to say about like what changes for people? And
I think the thing that I notice is the confidence bit. You come here. Someone once asked me, how are they? Do your guys? How do you work with them so that they become happy? And I don't think we do. I don't think we teach them to be happy. I think we teach them to live with dignity, to live in a space that is there to be upstanding citizens, to get along with their communities, to be good people generally, and just good community members, and to reintegrate back into the community of their choice. And they can leave Sagatay, they can live in Toronto, they can live somewhere else, but they now have the skills to do that and not end up back in jail because they've got the resources. But I do believe we really we emphasize the dignity portion. We're not here to make you happy. We're here to work with you so that you have dignity in yourself and you know that you can do it when you leave.
Wow, that's wonderful. So Shane, what was it like to enter Sagatay, and like how was it different? And like, did it feel when you were there like, wow, this is amazing, as a different way of thinking about my life?
Stepping into it not open-minded, I didn't know what to expect. But the first few days, crossing that barrier of no judgment, where you're judged everywhere else, is a big barrier to let down your guard and to start healing. The fact that I don't consider anybody at Sagatay staff, I consider them a part of my community and family and my extended. That's the other part about Sagatay that is different than anywhere else.
Right.
Because it's a community and because they're instrumental in trying to help us if we want it, because you have to want it as well. They can't do it for you. They're there to support you every step of the way if you want it. And if you put in your 100, they'll put in their 150. So that's the quick way I can say it. And truthfully, like, Sagatay has been so instrumental in my continued success that I never thought I would ever get back in my life to this point. And I'm very grateful for everybody here that has supported me and helped me through this journey, through my healing, teaching me my culture, which my parents never really talked about because my father was embarrassed and told us not to tell anybody that we were Nish growing up. So growing up and learning my culture and seeing all the things that I missed, and Sagatay is the one that actually really opened that door for me. getting to fire keep, getting to drum, getting to be part of circle, getting to be part of ceremony, learning the language. It's all part of getting back to my community that I haven't been a part of. Also, for lack of myself, drugs, homelessness, incarceration, and family. But now having this opportunity, it's something that I'm glad that I'm a part of, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
That's very powerful. Your words, listening to everyone, it's like, what a transformation. And how you mentioned that you never expected that such change was possible, right? So that's really amazing.
And that's the 100% truth. I never in a million years sitting inside would have thought that at this point in time, I have 2 jobs. I have my own place. I'm standing on my own 2 feet. I have a bank account. I have ID. I have my family support. I have Sagatay support. I have the community support. I have so much behind me now that it's amazing. Like, it really is. And I wish other people get the opportunity to be in my shoes, to put in the work as well, but also to get the advantages of putting in that work and seeing what it can actually do, because you can do it. If I can get out of from where I was with their help, this is proof that we need more support from them, because this was the life changer for me.
Yeah.
100%.
That's amazing. This is like the main outcome over top of everything, right? Is the change that you feel, and not just feel, but like you bring to your life. That's just wonderful. Jane, how does the program work? Like, a person shows up, or is there, do you meet with them while they're incarcerated? How does it work operationally? Can you walk?
So for Sagatay, we do have a process, I would say, an intake process. We have people can register online. They can apply online to be at Sagatay. I also visit the institutions in Kingston, I would say like 2 to 3 times a year, to speak to men who are looking for a program like Sagatay, or maybe not even looking and don't know. I will say sometimes I meet men who don't know because they haven't been told about our program, or don't know because, and there are documented situations where, POs sort of, they divert Indigenous men from coming to Sagatay. Sometimes it just seems like too much work. I don't know, because there is a process. There's an application. We get the application. We either meet with the person in person if they are in Toronto, or we meet them through Zoom or phone, and we have a phone conversation. There's about, I think, 20 questions or so that we ask, just to assess where they are in life, where they are, and what they want to do. Are they healthy? Do they want to be healthy? All the factors. So, and then we decide, and for the majority of the time, people are accepted. I think the one important thing is commitment. So you must be committed to yourself, not Sagatay so much, but to yourself, to do well in here, to put in the effort. As Shane said, that if you're going to do the 100%, we'll put in the 150 and stand by you. So there has to be that commitment that I'm here. They're given sort of a spiel of what Sagatay does. We're abstinence-based, all the things. So it's just a good conversation about who you are, where you're coming from, what you need, and can we help you with what you need? Because the other thing is, we are not a treatment center. So sometimes we'll have men apply and hope for a treatment. We just don't do that. So we have to have those conversations. And then once they're accepted, we give them a date. It could be as soon as the next day if we have a bed, or it could be 3 months later. We do have a wait list for that lasts forever, always. With 5 beds, you always have a wait list. So, and then once they come in, we take a couple days to sort of settle them in. And if you're not from Toronto, we settle you into Toronto. It's very holistic. It's very, I think we try to be nurturing and kind. And so they settle in and then we get them started into the program. They get reassessed by their case managers. So we have 23 guys here and we have 2 case managers. One of them is a CSC specific case manager. So she knows all the ins and outs of the CSC world and can work with conditions, understands that world of it. And then we have a case manager who works with community guys also. So the caseload is about 12 to 13. And then we assess what they need specifically, and we really meet the client where they're at. So there's no sort of preset plan ever.
Right.
The questions that we ask are the preset things, but after that, nothing is preset. We just meet you where you need us to be. So if it's ID, we'll do that. And that sort of starts it. But it is always based on what the person needs and we don't have a set program aside from the life skills part and the traditional, the cultural stuff. But otherwise, we're just going to work with whatever it is that you need to succeed or to move forward. But we really just look at commitment and some time of sobriety just because we don't have a treatment program.
Right. So that's very interesting. Steve, so in thinking about like the investment to do this, like how does the cost of Sagatay compare to mainstream reintegration approaches?
All right. Well, I'll run off a few numbers, and I hope I don't lose people along the way here. Looking at cost effectiveness and a bit of an analysis here of different ways that CSC does things. The federal correctional institution cost per day is roughly around $400 to $425 a day per person. A CSC operated healing lodge is about $410 per person, so maybe cheaper. An Indigenous run healing lodge, usually in First Nation communities or a couple urban centers, there's not many of them. Comparing that to the CSC operating healing lodge is $256, a drastic underinvestment and drastically less than the Corrections Canada runs healing lodges. Residential addictions treatment program in Ontario can range somewhere between $190 to $432 a day. And Sagatay currently, with our per bed program, it's about $75 a day, which isn't that much really. Really a drop in the bucket compared to the other numbers I raised. So it's a return on investment. It's a high return on reintegration investment. Each successful reintegration avoids about $500,000 to $1 million in justice system costs over 5 years. And, it has other positive trickle-down effects as well. Intergenerational community impact, which you can't really put a number on, is it creates a multiplier effect with participants by influencing family and community networks and helping the men achieve their goals and do better for themselves, which you really can't put a price on. Fulfilling Canada's legal and moral commitments under the TRC, investing in Sagatay program model would support Canada's legal and moral commitments to the TRC and advancing Indigenous self-determination. I would like to point out that, earlier I talked about Section 84 and Section 81 healing lodges. Yes, they are successful for those that can get into it, but, as I mentioned, the Indigenous healing lodges, they receive about 40% less funding than the CSC operated healing lodges. I know in other studies that I've read, the cultural folks that work at the CSC healing lodges don't get treated the same as an Indigenous one. They don't get the same level of respect, although they might get a higher salary. For Section 84 in 23 and 24, approximately 1,004 Indigenous offenders expressed interest in Section 84 releases, but only 461 were granted release on Section 84. So yes, it works. It could work far better and way more efficiently. It doesn't seem to be achieving its desired goal. And I don't know if people recently saw the CBC reports that came out yesterday about Canada's RCMP following Indigenous leaders and investing in that and looking to see if there was criminal activity among our First Nations leadership from the 70s to the 80s. They looked at groups like AFN and other Indigenous organizations. You'd think that those investments could have been better put to use, perhaps in maybe this area, helping people reintegrate. Those surveillance of Indigenous leaders didn't generate anything. They weren't involved in criminal activity. They're just folks like us here at Sagatay trying to make better futures for the people that we serve. There's something lopsided here in Canada when it comes to Indigenous folks.
Yeah, thank you. That's really an important thing for people to think about here. Many political parties, like every election, they'll come up, we're the law and order party. And then, don't complain when the investment is in the wrong place, right? Like what you're doing, every Canadian should be happy about. And there should be Sagatays across the country. Like this works. It's based on really sound, concept and traditions. It changes people's lives. Like we've got to rally around this. What do you think it would take to get this scaled more, right? So that more people could take the idea and run with it in their community.
I think what it needs is political will.
Right.
And it's not through a lack of trying. I've had 2 ministers of community safety come to Sagatay themselves and see the program for themselves. That really didn't get me anywhere in terms of our desire to expand. It was a really useless exercise. It was like they didn't listen. I guess look at the stats, right? If there's 30 to 33% of Indigenous people in corrections, why is there not at least that percentage points in investment in Indigenous interventions?
Yeah.
Really lopsided. I really don't understand the logic behind it. I know a lot of our political parties pride themselves on tough on crime. I don't think tough on crime works.
Yeah.
Healing works. Helping people heal from past traumas works, but if we're going to be tough on crime, in essence, you're re-traumatizing people.
Absolutely. I agree with you. It's just, it doesn't make sense. And, like if there are people involved in government on the line, or if people in government, like people need to hear what's going on, right? Because this is real and it's effective. It hits every mark that you would want, right? It'll reduce crime. It's be the best investment you could make instead of continuing with the old things. And so we're going to move to questions soon, but I just have a few last things to ask. Like we've got quite a large group of people watching this today. Is there anything in particular you would want people to take away today?
Yeah, well, I want to raise a practical example. I know a few years back, less than 5 years ago, there's some large media releases about two Indigenous men in 2 different provinces who were involved in, who were released from corrections out on parole. They had a lack of supervision. I think one was AWOL. One incident took place at Peter Ballantyne First Nation, where this offender, did some heinous crimes. And then another one was in just outside of Six Nations, where over the winter, an OPP officer was shot and killed by this offender. A lot of the knee-jerk responses were, we need to get tougher on crime. We need to, put limits on people getting out without supervision. There needs to be more things in place to supervise these guys better. These incidents took place in First Nations communities. Not any media folks or anybody talked about perhaps these First Nations need more resources to help
Yeah,
these
yeah.
people. Maybe we need more investments in First Nations rather than getting tough on crime. These communities had no way of properly supervising these folks that come there. They had no means to help them reintegrate back in the community. So perhaps if there was greater investment in Indigenous interventions, led and run by Indigenous folks, not led and run by CSC, I think we'd have better outcomes. And I don't think we'd be talking about let's get tough on crime. We'd be talking more about how successful it works, about how people are reintegrating back into society, that they're successfully reintegrated and they're not falling into homelessness.
Excellent, excellent. I want to hear from Jane and Shane. So Jane, what would you want people to take away from this session?
This program works because it's based in culture, and it is Indigenous governed. And, the easiest way I can put this is we don't ask engineers to do surgery, and we don't ask doctors to teach how to build a building. So it doesn't make sense that non-Indigenous entities, or whatever you want to call it, are teaching Indigenous culture. So the culture has to be, the program has to be based in culture, because that's the issue. The issue with the challenges our guys face is that they've been cut off from that culture. Their roots have been cut off. They've been displaced in so many different ways that they have to go back to that before they can heal, before they can understand. They have to go back to that with dignity. They have to, as Shane said, his father didn't talk about it because there are people who just felt ashamed to say so, to say that they're Indigenous, and we want to change that. So it needs to be rooted in culture and governed by Indigenous models. The other thing is, it's got to be holistic in the sense that we have to be able to meet them where they are, and we have to be able to do what we're saying. So we say this is culturally based, but if we don't have the culture in the house, it's not going to work. And I think that is a lot of the challenges everywhere else. Is that maybe we're just not doing what we say we're doing, but I feel at 9 years we are. And that's what makes this model work. And the very basic and simplest things, I think, as Steve said, is we work from a place of kindness. And that's just, Steve really presses that on us. But it has to be culturally based, because the original issue was the displacement. And then just meeting them wherever they are. It just does not matter what the specific challenges are. We will meet you there, and then we will figure out the solution, and then we'll work on it. And I do think there's some challenge with people not wanting to do that work. I mean, we have lots of information out there on all of this, but nothing is actually being done. And I've also said to Steve, I'm a little bit tired of telling people what the problem is, because I think it's been said, and it's been said many times, and it's been said better than I could ever say it. And we have the numbers to show, but at what point does someone say, okay, this is working, we're going to do the work?
Right.
It's just, yeah.
Thank you so much. And Shane, we're going to give you the last word before questions. What made the biggest difference in your journey, and what message would you want people to walk away from this with?
So I think the biggest difference from anywhere else is the community. The
Right.
community at Sagatay, it's not just a name. That's the other thing. Sagatay is not just a name or a building, it's the people. It's the people behind it that makes it work. Because you could put that name on any building and call it whatever you want, but if the people like this are not here, it's not going to work. It has to be like-minded people that want to see people like myself succeed as well.
Yeah.
So that's what makes Sagatay work so well, is because they want to see us succeed. They want to see us heal. They're there for every step of the way. And when we slip and have a question, they're there to answer it and to lead us in the right direction instead of leading us astray.
That's really powerful. You must, when you see people come into the program after you, it must be a great feeling to just know what they're going to get into. So that's great.
Like firsthand, having experienced it and seeing people come after me and being able to maybe sway their opinion a little bit. Coming
Yeah.
from the penitentiary, we all have the same opinion. We have the jail mentality coming out, and it's really hard to adjust sometimes. But having somebody that's a little bit ahead and that can speak on the success and what to expect also helps people like myself and others that come after me to succeed as well. Having that person to see that, like, you can do this, and then to see the next person do it, and then that person helps the next person. It's that community again.
It's the community. Yep. But that's amazing. So I want to thank all of you for your comments and your thoughts, and also for your role in making this wonderful thing that's making life better for so many people. We're going to move now to questions here. So I think it goes over to Steph. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the Q&A is filling up here, so we'll try and get to as many of the questions as we can. People are excited to talk about this topic. I'll start with the first one here. Let's see. We've got a question from an MA student doing research on mental health programming for Indigenous boys and men. She says many of the programs available to Indigenous men are centered around deficits and incapacity, IPV, substance use, recidivism. How does NAMIRIS take a strengths-based approach? And if possible, how would you define strengths-based approaches?
Yeah. Listen, it's always good to find the good in people. I think it's far more easier to find the good in people than it is to find their deficits. I think if you treat people as human beings, not within the sense of having a hierarchy, you'll get a lot further in terms of working with them. So I think if there's a shift and change in mindset, I think we'll have better outcomes instead of always finding negative factors. Find the things that work for them. Maybe if a person is artistic, and it might be easier to use that strength of artistry and working with the person and building a helpful relationship. It might make it happen faster than you would then, say, hammering down on whatever their deficits or ailments might be. Hope that answers the question. I don't know if it's a right answer, but it's one approach I think that seems to work very well. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Steve. I guess this question came up, maybe we didn't answer it at the beginning, but how many men have gone through the program?
Sorry, the whole program?
Yeah, the question's looking at, essentially, I guess from start to finish, if you know.
I don't know if I have a solid number. We've been running since 2012, this particular program. So I'm not entirely sure of how many altogether, but that's in our study also, and it will be coming out.
Great. Someone would like to know how many people who are advocates for the unhoused, or how can people who are advocates for the unhoused be the most help? Which is also related to a second question that asked around beyond political will, which is difficult to predict. How else can people willing to be advocates help? People really want to get the word out about this program, it sounds.
That's a tough one besides political will. Well, I think for the homeless issues, if you have a spare room or something, maybe rent it out to someone that's experiencing homelessness, offer it at affordable rent rates. It's hard to do because it's someone that involves creating trust or making a risk to do that. I think that's one way of helping with homelessness, or doing clothing drives when it starts to get cold in the fall. Maybe winter coats and that sort of thing, so that people who are experiencing homelessness or shelter homelessness, they have warm clothing to wear. Great opportunities for people experiencing homelessness. And the second part of the question around helping to spread the word and expand this in corrections, just make this a regular dialogue. I know usually when NamiRes opens up new housing in neighborhoods and we're required to do a community consultation, every single time we experience racism. I'm almost convinced that our non-native neighbors are afraid of us when we purchase a property and share intentions to develop it. Often they'll make assumptions that all the men that we serve are criminals. Not all of them are criminals or have gone through the criminal justice system, or they'll make really awful assumptions that our men are pedophiles. I don't know where they get this notion from, but so if there's new Indigenous housing opening up in your neighborhood, don't be someone that opposes it, support it. We need more housing. Housing is secure to end homelessness. Housing is also something people need when they get out of corrections. Often this label of being homeless comes with a stigma. A lot of people experience homelessness in their lifetime. It doesn't mean they'll be living a lifetime of being homeless. Same with folks that go to jail. They might go to jail for a little while. They learn lessons the hard way in life. Maybe they didn't have the best circumstances in life. But when they leave, it doesn't mean they'll always be going back and forth. So be an ally in any way you can, whether it's attending a consultation and supporting new developments in your neighborhood or community. That's my advice.
Great. Thanks, Steve. This question's for you, Shane. What programs are needed before people end up in institutions? Which ones are needed in institutions, and what programs are needed outside to maintain a continuum of support? So that is a big question.
That's a lot to take in. Okay, so there's so many different answers I can give for that, but for like my circumstances was addiction, homelessness. Those were the two main factors that led me to where I ended up. And trying to fight those two together was next to impossible. Being homeless and addicted to drugs, you can't get off of one without the other. So trying to be clean, it's the only thing that the system did for me was to help me get clean. And I did the rest myself by maintaining that and having the right supports. But it took me years and years and years of trying and failing until I finally reached where I am now. Because this was the one that actually did succeed. Because in incarceration, they put you in and you get, as soon as you're done your sentence, you get put back onto the streets with whatever you have in your canteen, and good luck. And we'll probably see you in a couple months. It's pretty much what they say. So it's a big question to answer from my point of view. More programs to battle addiction and housing, affordable housing. It is a human right. We should all have a roof over our head. It's instrumental in being a human and waking up and feeling like you have dignity. Because sleeping in a stairwell is not dignity. It's living. You're still alive, but it's not dignity. So I solutions, I could list off millions, but real world solutions, it's housing. I mean, more education on how to help people with addictions and how to get them off the streets before they get incarcerated, before they end up in the system, the revolving door.
Thank you, Shane. This participant asks, I'm curious whether you see the Sagatay model as something that could be adapted to include a harm reduction or treatment component. Given the strong intersection between mental health, substance use, and incarceration, is there potential to expand the model in that direction?
Interesting question. I really strongly believe the beauty of the Sagatay program is the fact that it's abstinence-based. I don't think you could have the same type of cultural interventions if it were a harm reduction model. I don't think the men coming through our program, if it were a harm reduction, would have the same sort of outcomes. Often people involved in addictions, it's a mask for deeply rooted trauma that maybe they don't have other more positive ways to deal with it. With that said, we're not opposed to harm reduction. We're going to be operating some harm reduction shelters here in Toronto soon because we recognize there's a segment of the Indigenous homeless population that we're currently not serving as well as we could. So we will be. But this abstinence-based approach, I think it brings more consciousness for their participants to focus on their healing. It allows them more access to cultural programs that is more congruent, I guess, with cultural norms. Great question. I don't think it could be adapted as successfully as the way we do it currently right now.
Great, thanks, Steve. This question is around hiring, and they wanted to know, does Sagatay hire those who were in the program, and is mentorship available?
Do you want to answer that,
Yeah.
Steve?
Well, I like the fact that we hire folks that have been involved before or have come through different challenges in their lives. We have in the past hired people that have come through the program. We have one rule, and that is, they have to wait 1 year from when they're a resident to be able to apply for our services. We want to have that 1 year because, once you become a staff from being a former resident, it represents what could be perceived as a power imbalance. So that 1 year of not being a client in our services or resident is enough of that separation, and that afterwards we can confident to hire them on if they do really well in the interview process. We have examples where we've done that before, and there's a real strength to that. I know a lot of non-native organizations, they call that hiring peoples with lived experience, but Indigenous community, I don't think we need that. A lot of Native folks have tons of lived experience in a variety of areas. I often argue that hiring people with lived experience, it enables non-Indigenous organizations to hire people at a lower rate of pay, without benefits, and without tenure of their jobs. And it compromises their relationship with folks who they may have experienced homelessness with. So we hire them as staff, and they come with a variety of lived experiences already.
Great. And a related question is, how has staff retention been the past few years? This work is powerful and can lead to burnout.
Thanks for that question. Yeah, I don't get that one very often. Listen, I've worked in Indigenous organizations before where there was a lot of dysfunction, where reflecting on it, I used to hate coming to work every day, but I was loyal to the people I worked with. I learned how not to do things. When I became the executive director, I always infuse in staff, we have to treat people with kindness. I communicate with our staff quite regularly. I'm not a conventional executive director where I stay in my office and people don't talk to me. I go out of my office and I talk to people, and I do it on purpose to have a working relationship with our staff. Our staff retention is very high. We had staff that have been around for 20 years, 15. I've been here 17. We have a lot of staff that have been around a long time. We support each other when people go through hardships staff-wise. I allow staff time to deal with whatever they need to deal with, whether it's a severe family issue or personal issues or health issues. We value our staff. They do the work that helps people to better themselves. So we have a really good staff retention, and it's a healthy place to work. One day I realized, working in the unhealthy workplace I used to be in, that the majority of time that I'm awake is not with my family or loved ones and people I want to hang out with. They're in this unhealthy workplace where I didn't really want to be, except for, working with the clients who I respected and liked working with. So when I left, I thought, geez, I want to work in a healthy workplace. I want to value and respect the people I work with, along with the people that we serve. And if I'm going to be awake and doing most of my work in spaces where I'm not with my family, I want to make darn sure it's a happy place. So I work hard on that. It's not always happy. It's not always rosy or anything, but that's the way it works sometimes in carrying out this work. But at the end of the day, we can have dialogue and speak to each other. So I invest a lot of time in communicating with staff. We have a high staff retention, and I think all those efforts help to contribute to that high staff retention rate.
Great, thanks for that answer, Steve. This question's around housing stability. And given current prices, it's difficult to cover rent with a welfare check or low income. Do you offer a rent supplement?
Okay, I'll answer that one. Jane can jump in anytime.
I was just going to say, if you want to go ahead.
So so I'll talk about two things that we offer. So we offer our own affordable housing. We're I don't want to say aggressive, but we're successful in obtaining properties, fixing up the units, and renting them out to our residents at deeply affordable rents. So I say deeply affordable because in the province of Ontario, affordable is considered 80% of what market rent is. And like in Toronto, I think the average one bedroom is about $2,000. It might be higher. So affordable would mean it would be $1,600 a month. That's still not affordable. So we offer rents that are deeply affordable. They're probably below 50% of what market rent is. And how we do that is we purchase the properties, we fix them up through capital grants that we receive, and then we rent them out. When you own it and the rent comes in, it covers the expenses, the utilities, that sort of thing. And we have staff to support the guys to stay housed. So that's how we do it there. And then we assign someone to follow up with the guys in the housing, whether it's our own or private market, and make sure that they stay housed. They keep that relationship going and make sure that they're doing okay. If they're not doing okay, they'll help direct them to where they can seek help. For the private market rents, we do access subsidies when we can get them. They're difficult to get these days in Toronto, but when we can, we will get them. We also partner with non-Indigenous housing providers that offer deeply affordable housing. And we have one partnership where they dedicate 20% of their housing allocation to Indigenous clients. So they work with us and other Indigenous organizations in Toronto. And then with the City of Toronto, with the Toronto Community Housing Corporation, we have a partnership with the City of Toronto where they dedicate 20% of their affordable housing units to Indigenous peoples. So that's how we get people housed. And it's through these partnerships and through our own projects that we make it happen.
Great, thank you. Jane, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Steve said most of that. I do want to add, just with our housing again, Steve said, I think he said this, but we build the buildings with dignity in mind. So it's not a tiny little 4x4 room, or there's just so much in Toronto I think you can speak about when it comes to inadequate housing. And we just always make sure that living with dignity is in the plans, that is always our goal. And we don't shift from that. We're adamant on that portion of it. I do want to just go back also and talk about the staff retention. I wanted to add that I think with Namirez, we truly believe, and because it's Indigenous led, we know that staff come with their own trauma and their own challenges. And Namirez really looks after everyone, I would say. We're just understanding of the fact that some of us, we're not clients, but we are human and we have challenges. And so we're almost as supportive with our staff, I think. And we are, if not a family, a community. And we want staff to do well. So we want them to stay. And our hiring process I think, is incredible. And that is, something Steve really pushes on us. And there's just a standard of that we keep up.
Great, thank you. This participant asks, what is the process, or is there a process for when men break the program requirements? So for example, staying abstinent.
Yeah, I can speak to that. One of the rules we have at Sagatay is that we don't close our doors to you. You may come and be at Sagatay for 6 months and then have a slip, and we'll work with you on that. It may mean that you're no longer at Sagatay for a little bit. It may mean that you must work on something else, but we will plan that with you. So abstinence, for example, you said someone has a slip. Well, we don't just put you out and say, good luck, we'll see you when you're ready. We'll have that conversation. Where are you? Are you ready for a treatment? What can we do? Can you be here? Is this the right thing? And Sagatay is not right for everyone at all times. It could be right for someone now and maybe it wasn't the right thing 6 months ago, and that does happen. So we don't close our doors to anyone. We just say, when you're ready, we will be here. And they're able to come back. We just keep having conversations. Where are you? What do you need? Where do we step in?
Great. I'm just skipping the chat. There's lots of great discussion happening there, and a couple of questions have popped up in there as well. One big question is, when will the research be available and how can folks access it? And I can quickly answer that one for everyone. We will be sharing the research reports as well as this webinar recording with everyone that's here today, and everyone that's registered. We'll be emailing it to the email you registered with as soon as it's available in a couple of weeks, I would say. We're getting to the end of our time together. Got maybe one or two more questions here. This person asks, have any of your clients come to you with gang affiliation designations? And if so, how do you manage these situations?
Yeah, many of our clients come to us with gang affiliations, and we deal with it like we would deal with anyone else. That is a human being. That is someone who's been through a very rough time, someone who's chosen to leave the gang and made a commitment to Sagatay. So there are some things we do, if there are opposing gang members and things like that, we have steps in process, but we treat them the same. And we just, again, assess what they need, where they want to be in a year, and we continue. So that gang affiliation is there, and we know, and we've got factors we have to deal with, but that's a human first, that's a person first. So we just deal with all those things.
Well, that's a lovely note to end on. Steve and Shane, anything else to add before we
Okay.
close
Yeah.
out the session?
Yeah, so usually I say this when I go to other forums. I didn't mention it today, but Sagatay program is the only for Indigenous by Indigenous halfway house, or as Corrections Canada calls it, community residential facility in all of Ontario, and only 6 beds. 6 beds in all of Ontario. Say it again, 6 beds in all of Ontario for Indigenous by Indigenous. That's it. I think there needs to be more. I can't say it loud enough. We know what we do works well. There needs to be way more of it. I don't think that's just falls within the area of reconciliation. I think that falls within the area of good policy decision making. Do they not want to see more success? I'm curious. I don't know. It's a real head scratcher there, but we need way more, way more. We know our communities best. A lot of our staff and myself have gone through all the similar issues that other Native folks have gone through. Not that dissimilar to some of the guys we work with coming out of corrections. Many of us have found good pathways in our lives, and we can role model those types of behaviors for some of the men coming out who maybe never had that sort of good role modeling when they were younger growing up. So yes, we know what we're doing. We don't need others that are non-Native deciding and thinking they know what's good for us. Self-determination is when you give and provide Indigenous groups with the tools they need to do the work for themselves to empower our own communities. We need that. So I'll leave it at that.
Just going through the process myself, and being a success, passing that along to the next person and putting the word out, and doing stuff like this to advocate for it for the next person that might not have heard about it or had the opportunity to even learn about this program. So getting it out there and making people aware of it is a big thing. And I'm glad that I was asked to speak, because if it even reached one person, I mean, it's more than it would have reached before. So I'm just grateful that I had this opportunity, and I really hope that it really spreads and Sagatay becomes bigger than what it is, because with 6 beds, they're doing amazing work. So imagine what they could do with 60. That's, yeah.
Thank you all. And yes, Shane, you've reached more than one person today, absolutely, on this call, and then going forward, this will be sure to make an impact. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you again to the 3 of you for joining us and spending time with us this afternoon. And thank you to everyone that joined us for the panel. We'll be taking a break in April, but we'll be back with a panel in May, so stay tuned. As you saw, Lindsay dropped our feedback form in the chat, so please take a moment to fill it out or send us an email. We can connect you with the presenters too. I saw that question pop up in the chat, so feel free to reach out at thehub@edu.yorku.ca. And we'll be sure to send you this recording and all of the materials mentioned in the session today shortly. Wishing you all a wonderful afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you're calling in from. And thanks again for joining us. Have a lovely day.